that was one of my most difficult journeys. There would be other difficult journeys, but I will never forget that trek to Bethlehem. 70 miles when you're 9 months pregnant is just not fun. There were others setting off with us at the beginning, others of Joseph's relatives, but they soon left us behind. Joseph was so patient, and I'm surprised he didn't put his back out. He would assist me onto the donkey, which would leave us both in laughter, because where do you hold a pregnant woman? And then a short time later he would assist me back off the donkey, because when you're pregnant, riding a donkey is just not comfortable. It doesn't matter how many blankets you've used for extra padding. And so mainly I just shuffled along, holding on to Joseph's arm. It took us days. Finally, the lights of the town were ahead of us, and that gave us just the boost we needed to keep going. The road was long deserted, and we knew that town was going to be packed, but what choice did we have? The Romans made the rules, and we lived by them. Halfway through the journey, my stomach had begun to feel strange. By the time we got to Bethlehem, I knew I was in labour. Now, I didn't want to worry Joseph, but I was really getting quite scared. I was there with no one I knew, just strangers, and we were struggling to find somewhere to stay. Every time we knocked, the innkeeper would take one look at me and think, too much trouble. I can remember wondering if I was going to give birth to God's son right there in the street. But as it happened, it actually wasn't that much better. It was a woman who opened that last door. She was all flustered and red-faced. I guess that she'd been having a busy day as well, but as soon as she saw me, trying hard not to moan and clutching onto Joseph's arm, she took one look and she rushed inside and came back a few moments later with some blankets. She took charge of me and told Joseph to follow on behind. Now, it wasn't great. I won't pretend that it was, but right at that moment, I really did not care much. The lady, Rebecca, she'd soon sorted out a space. It was cleared and cleaned and padded up. She'd moved everybody out, all the other guests. The men were shoved out the door. Only the women and the small children were allowed to stay, and soon a few midwives were found, and the other women were clubbing together to help out. When I said yes to God, I did not expect that I would give birth far from home, surrounded by strangers, however kindly, with a cow and several donkeys, providing the warmth and the smell. I'm not sure that anyone is ever really prepared for the birth of their first child. It's true that the pain is quickly forgotten, but for me, it was more than that. As Jesus arrived into the world, into the hands of a stranger unknowingly the first to touch God. I felt that sense of peace and presence that I had felt when I first conceived. And then, cold and wet, tiny and fragile, Jesus was placed on my breast and I saw God face to face. It was like time stopped, just for a moment, when the enormity of this event dawned on me. And there was a heaviness in my shoulders and in my heart. However hard I thought that this had been, I knew that there would be harder days to come. And that being the mother of God was a huge blessing, but that it would also come with great pain. There wasn't much time then to ponder. There was so much chaos as the rest of the guests came back in, and the animals were snuffling and grunting around at the manger that we had placed Jesus into. The men came back in, the women began preparing the food, and people were eating, and we were trying to find somewhere to sleep. We were exhausted. I really don't know how we got through that situation, but I do remember that my prayers that night were a little less reverent than they usually were. But little did we know that that was not to be the end of the unusual events of the evening.